Well, hello there, and welcome to Week 3 of the NFL Contest Show. I'm your host, Jesse Flynn. Well, that was quite an eventful Week 2. A couple of those games came right down to the wire, but in the end, finished the weekend at a perfect 5-0, sitting at a perfect 10-0 on the season. Looking pretty good through the first 2 weeks of the Circa Millions. But hey, those 2 weeks don't matter anymore. It's on to Week 3. Time to look at these games, see which ones I like. There's some really interesting matchups this week, some big numbers out there to choose from. So let's see which 5 games I like for Week 3 of the NFL contest. So the first game that I like is the Miami Dolphins +4 heading out to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. The Raiders are 2-0, but they're a fortunate 2-0. They, won a wild game against the Ravens in Week 1, and then went out to Pittsburgh and faced a Steelers team that was lacking a few of their defensive starters, and then they lost probably their best defensive player in T.J. Watt early in that game. They were able to win, but now they're coming home to face this Dolphins team. The Raiders, they've lost 2 of their starting offensive linemen. And then Leatherwood, the rookie right tackle, is dealing with an injury, so he may not be 100%. And he's had some penalty issues to start his NFL career. So they're pretty suspect across the offensive line. It looks like Josh Jacobs, their running back, may not play. So that really doesn't bode well for the Raiders' offense. A team that doesn't run the ball very well. They've been relying pretty heavily on Derek Carr to throw the ball. And they're going up against a Dolphins team that their best attribute on their defensive side is their secondary. They've got 2 top-notch corners who should be able to match up against the Raiders' wide receivers and allow the Dolphins to double-team Waller, who we know is Derek Carr's #1 target. The Miami Dolphins are one of the best teams at getting pressure on the quarterback, so that's another reason why the offensive line issues for the Raiders is not a good factor for them going into this game. The Dolphins are having to go with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, but this isn't really much of a downgrade, as he's probably one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL and could be a starter on several other teams if he wanted to. He's got weapons all around him. He's getting Will Fuller for the first game this year for the Dolphins. He's got Parker. He's got Gesicki. They don't really have the greatest offensive line, but I think that since he's taking all the starting reps with the #1s this week, Flores will have a game plan that's for Brissett and the plays that he likes, allow him to get the ball out of his hands quickly, get it to some of these playmakers that they have on the offensive side of the ball. And we know that the Raiders can rush the passer, but they're really lacking in coverage ability. Their secondary is pretty suspect. And I could just see the Dolphins going into Las Vegas and pulling off the upset in this game. So for my first pick, I'm going with the Dolphins, +4 against the Las Vegas Raiders. The second game that I like is probably one of the more popular games this week. I think everybody's going to be watching it, and that's the battle of the 2-0 teams. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are heading out to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The Bucs are the cream of the crop right now. I mean, they're defending champs. They're on a 10-game winning streak. They've put up a lot of points in their last couple of games, but the defenses that they faced weren't nearly as good as the one they're going to face going up against this Los Angeles Rams team. And we saw this same Rams team beat this Tampa Bay team in Tampa Bay last year with Jared Goff as their quarterback. We know that Tom Brady, the thing that affects him the most is pressure up the middle. And we've seen the Rams be able to use Aaron Donald and their offensive or defensive line and linebackers to create pressure up the middle and force Tom Brady into some throws that he normally wouldn't make. What we saw in that game last season. And, we've got a Rams offense that should be able to take advantage of the injuries to Tampa Bay's secondary and be able to exploit some of those matchups with Kupp and Woods as their wide receivers. Now they've got Stafford running the offense, so that's definitely an upgrade from what they had the last time these two teams played. So I just think that this is a great opportunity for the Rams at home. The spread is only, it's plus 1.5. It was minus 1.5 in the look-ahead lines. Now they've jumped it up. Even though the Bucs were a last-second field goal against the Cowboys, losing game one, and were in a battle against Tampa Bay against Atlanta, right up until when Matt Ryan threw 2 pick sixes and just completely, blew that game out of the water. So the Bucs, although the final score, is in their favor, those games were, pretty close, even though like the Atlanta score was a blowout. Now you've got the Rams, who played a very good Colts defense last week and were able to pull out the win on the road, which is never an easy thing in the NFL. Even when they were going up against a Colts offense that struggled at times, they were still able to show that they could run the ball. But that's not really where the Bucs, make their money. They haven't run the ball much at all this season. They've been a pass-first offense, and we've seen that the Rams can get pressure on the quarterback, and they've got the guys in the back of the defense to cover these wide receivers. And this is a home game for the Rams. Normally, I don't put too much emphasis on home field advantage, but I think in this case, it's going to be enough to push the Rams over the edge and get them to the finish line and win this game. So give me the Rams plus the 1.5 at home taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the third game that I like is the Minnesota Vikings plus 1.5 at home taking on the Seattle Seahawks. What can you say about the last 2 weeks for the Minnesota Vikings? They've been right there at the end of the game with opportunities to win it, losing in overtime to the Bengals and losing on a last-second field goal on the road to the Cardinals. This is going to be their first home game. You've got Seattle coming in after a tough loss at home against the Tennessee Titans. But look, this is just a matchup where I see the Vikings are a pretty good team with a bad record. And what they do well, running the ball and the screen passes to the backs out of the backfield, is something that really gives this Seattle Seahawks defense fits. And they should be able to use Dalvin Cook and Madison to run the ball effectively against the Seattle defense and open up the passing lanes for Cousins to get the ball to Jefferson and Thielen and, be able to put some points on the board. We've seen Seattle come out on fire in the first half of the first 2 games. And then, as the teams make adjustments in the second half, the offensive productivity just seems to drop. They've gotten the benefit of some blown coverages and some, these moon balls that Russell Wilson throws to Tyler Lockett. That Lockett, he's a great receiver when it comes to tracking those type of balls. But you can't consistently count on that, those big strike plays to get you over the hump offensively. And, as good as Russell Wilson has been in the past, He is getting older. He's not the super fast, mobile guy he was 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, he's still elusive and he still knows how to move around in the pocket, but you can get to him. We saw it last week when the Tennessee Titans defense, that's not really known for getting pressure on the quarterback, were able to sack him a couple of times in that game, and was actually what helped get the Tennessee Titans back into that game when they were down, I believe, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. So it sets up pretty well for the Vikings at home. They're getting points to finally get that elusive win that they've come so close to getting in the first 2 weeks. And I just think that everybody's already counting them out because of the games that they've lost. But now we've seen the Bengals are a little bit better than they thought, and those losses and the Cardinals are a better team. So those losses that they've sustained in the first 2 weeks were to teams that originally weren't thought to be that good. So give me the Vikings plus the 1.5 at home for my third pick. My fourth pick for Week 3 is the Green Bay Packers plus 3.5 going out to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. Everybody was down on Aaron Rodgers after Week 1. They came out. They put up a pretty good game against the Lions in Week 2. This just looks like a good spot for them. They're finally getting their groove. San Francisco is just dealing with way too many injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Their secondary's just been ravaged by injuries to start the season. And, you're not facing Jalen Hurts. They may have been able to do some of those things and look really good against a second-year quarterback that's basically a rookie. You're going up against a former MVP in Aaron Rodgers. This dude's coming to play. He knows what you're trying to do defensively, and he knows exactly how to counter it. And when you don't have your best guys out there to try to take him out, you're just asking for trouble. And now you're giving me 3.5 points with this Green Bay team. And actually, since these lines have come out for the Circa Millions, that line has dropped down to 3. So you're getting an extra hook off of what the line is at the Circa Sportsbook if you were to bet this game right now. The San Francisco 49ers have played the first 2 games on the road. They're finally getting a chance to go home to play. They were, I think, 1-7 at home last year. So there's not really much of a home field advantage if you look at the way they played out in Levi Stadium last season. And now you expect them to lay 3.5 points on this team at home? I don't think so. Just give me the team that I think is going to win this game. I would take the Green Bay Packers. Now you're giving me 3.5 points on top of that. I'm definitely going to take this as one of my picks. And if he loses, I'll sleep good knowing that I went with the better team, the better quarterback. The coaches are pretty equal. I'll sleep good at night even if this game loses, because I feel that Aaron Rodgers is just that much of a factor in this game, and you're giving me over a field goal with this team. So for my fourth pick, give me the Green Bay Packers plus 3.5 taking on the San Francisco 49ers. So my fifth and final pick for Week 3 of the Circa Millions is one that's a tough one to want to bet, but sometimes in these contests you got to bet bad teams and just, hope for the best. So for my fifth pick, I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons plus 3 heading out to New York to take on the New York Giants. The Atlanta Falcons, they've lost by over 20 points in the first 2 games of the season. But both of those games were a lot closer than the final score would have you believe. And they are working with a new head coach and a new offensive coordinator, it's kind of progressed from Week 1 to Week 2, but you saw the growing pains as they've struggled in the red zone and they've struggled to convert on third downs. But I think now that they're getting a couple more weeks of reps with the offense together, they should be able to start converting some of those third downs, start converting some of those red zone opportunities into points, and it'll give them a chance to win The defense looked good against Tampa Bay last week. They just, those two interceptions by Matt Ryan that were returned for touchdowns just completely ruined any chance the Falcons had to win that game. Meanwhile, you've got the New York Giants, who somehow had an opportunity to win that game against the Washington football team when Heineke threw a very bad interception when they could have basically ran out the clock and still found a way to lose that game. Their defense doesn't get pressure on the quarterback, and their secondary is they're not very good. They're not covering. They're not, they gave up over 300 yards to Tyler Heineke. Matt Ryan is a much better quarterback than he is, and he's got just as good of weapons. What do you think he's going to do against this secondary? The last two teams Tampa Bay's played have been two of the teams that are have good defenses that can get after the quarterback. So their offensive line looked like a mash unit up there with Matt Ryan getting beat up. But the New York Giants don't have very good pass rushers, so the offensive line should be able to give Matt Ryan time to throw the ball. The only thing that concerns me about this game is Daniel Jones and his mobility, because that's the one factor that it allows them to stay in games is Daniel Jones using his legs to convert third downs and keep the ball, and try to move down and score some points. But I just think that the Atlanta Falcons defense is going to show up. They played pretty well last week. And if this Atlanta Falcons offense shows up, as I think they will, I believe they got a chance to win this game outright and get that first win of the season. I know we got two 0-2 teams going up against one another right now, and there's a few trends out there that say that, you should take the away team with points if it's under 5 points. So it's under 5 points. I know this is one that's going to stink, and it's one of those plays that if it doesn't work out, you look like an idiot. If it does work out, you look like a genius. Well, I got to go with what I believe is the right play in this one, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. So for my fifth and final pick, give me the Atlanta Falcons +3 taking on the New York Giants. So those are my 5 picks for Week 3 of the NFL season. Be sure to check in with me at deadmoneymedia.com to make sure these are my 5 official picks on Saturday afternoon. If there's any changes, I'll be sure to put it in my blog and I'll add it to the comments below. If you've gotten any use out of these videos, please hit that like and subscribe button. It'll help me out a lot. I hope you're doing well in your contests. I hope you're putting a lot of money in your bank accounts. Take care of yourselves out there and enjoy this Week 3 of the NFL season.